lecture, we're going to be talking about both the problem and hypothesis of an experiment. So in science, again, we try to answer questions or make observations of the natural world. And we do this by identifying problems or questions. So your problem is what you're trying to solve in your investigation. So again, going back to the example in the prior lecture, which is the best way to get to school could be a potential problem that you might be investigating. Problems are always written in the form of a question. Your hypothesis, however, is not a question. Hypothesis is a tentative or potential or possible explanation. Hypothesis can also be described as a prediction, an educated guess. If on the Regents exam you give a hypothesis in the form of a question, you will not receive credit because a hypothesis is not a question. It instead is trying to answer the question. So an example of a hypothesis could be the C train is the best way to get to school. A more formal way to write the hypothesis is in an if you do something, then predicting what will happen format. So an if-then format. So if I take the C train, then I will get to school in the least amount of time. That would be a hypothesis. So we again go with an if you do something, then you're making the prediction of what will happen based on doing that certain action. Let's do some practice. So you have several problems that are listed here. Notice that they're all in the form of a question. Your job is to write a hypothesis, again, which is a tentative explanation. You're trying to answer the question in a predictive format. You could write it in an if-then. So the first problem, do plants need light to grow? So what is the question asking? In this case, the question is asking whether or not the plants are actually going to need the light to grow. So your hypothesis has to include something about the light as well as the growth. Now the light is the variable that you're going to be testing the effect of, so that would go first. And the growth is how you're measuring it, so that would go second. So an example of a hypothesis for the first one would be, if plants are given light, then the plants will grow. Does music increase students' ability to do math problems? Again, think about what the variables, what's the cause and effect here. Does exercise increase heart rate? How does salt concentration or amount of salt, so we're thinking like low, medium, high amount. How does the salt concentration affect the hatching of brine shrimp? And the last one, does acidity, so the pH level, the acidity of soil affect plant growth? So with acidity, again, we're thinking about whether something is a low acidity would be closer to neutral, a high acidity would be a stronger acid. So at this point, why don't you pause the video until you have attempted to write a hypothesis for each problem. Okay, let's check your answers. Do plants need light to grow? If a plant gets light, then it will grow. Or if plants get more light, then they will grow more. Does music increase students' ability to do math problem? If a student listens to music, then it will decrease their ability to do math problems. You could also say if a student listens to music, then it will increase their ability to do math problems, or they will do more math problems if they listen to music. Does exercise increase heart rate? If a person exercises, then we're predicting what happens to the heart rate. Their heart rate will increase. How does salt concentration affect hatching of brine shrimp? If the salt concentration is high, then more brine shrimp eggs will hatch. Notice how I don't say if the salt concentration is high, it will affect the shrimp eggs. You can never just say that it will affect. You always have to give an indication of whether something's going to increase or decrease, what direction it's going to affect it in. And the last one, which again is a difficult one, If there is a low pH, which is a high acidity, then the plant will not grow. So again, this is a clear prediction on what's going to happen when you change the amount of acid. So in summary, a new student has arrived to class and doesn't know what a hypothesis is. How would you explain to them how to develop a proper hypothesis? Please make sure you write this on your notes and it will be checked in class.